we go. What's up, everybody? This is another episode of the Individual Skills Hockey Podcast. For this week's episode, we were lucky enough to sit down with Lambert Brown. Lambert is the head football coach at Wayzata High School, and he also works as an achievement specialist at Wayzata High School, working with kids every single day. A couple summers back, I had the privilege of seeing a lecture that Lambert gave, and it was based around diversity and equity inside of sport. It was given to all the high school coaches at Wayzata, and over the past few years, I've really come to appreciate and understand the importance in what he's an expert in, which is a topic surrounding that. You'll see it in the podcast. A lot of what he says all comes back to improving the player experience for your team, and in turn, that type of stuff can lead to a much stronger culture, which is going to help kids get better, help you win games, all of that great stuff. So if you're a coach of any sport, of any age, I think this is a great episode for you to learn and pique your interest in these types of topics because, and we mentioned in the podcast, being trained on this and being open in this type of stuff is going to help you as a coach actually enjoy the process more, because you're going to be equipped to handle certain incidents that are inevitable to show up inside of a team. You're going to have the tools to respond to those situations and then, like I said, improve the culture overall, which is going to be lead to a better player experience for everyone. So please watch. This is one of my favorite episodes we've done so far, and I hope you enjoy it. Thanks a lot. Okay, welcome in. This is the Individual Skills Hockey Podcast, a podcast that aims to bring quality education to youth hockey coaches, parents, and players with the mission of having a positive impact on the crazy youth hockey world. I'm your host, Miles Deeth, and today we are so lucky to have Lambert Brown in the studio. He's the head football coach at Wayzata High School, and right off the bat, I need to tell a story about a couple weeks ago. We had a podcast with Lambert and Coach Pat, kind of about being head coaches at such a big programs at the high school level. We did about 55 minutes and went to check the tape, and the microphones didn't work, so we lost that entire thing. So
we got them going today. And it's a chance that we can sit down in a room and talk programs again.
It's a second opportunity to have better questions and better answers as well.
It's going to be awesome. So it's going to be awesome.
So thanks for being here. How you doing today?
I'm awesome. I'm really good. How are you?
I'm good.
I appreciate you having me. I always enjoy getting a chance to talk, and this will be a good day.
So you're the head football coach, like I said, at Wayzata. You also have a different role at Wayzata High School, kind of in your day-to-day. Why don't you just start off by explaining what you do on a day-to-day basis there?
So my other role at Wayzata High School is I'm an achievement specialist at Wayzata High School. So I look at my role is to help students succeed. That's really what and it looks different for each and every kid there. But I really work with kind of underserved populations within the high school, but I kind of work with everybody as well. So not only to make a connection to Wayzata High School, but to help families make connections and understand the support systems and navigate a really, really large school system. To have somebody that believes in them and show, and what they can accomplish, and then help our students navigate that. So my day to day is really, every day is a little different. Some days it's working with a student who may just be struggling in a subject area, and we're trying to figure out how to help that kid pass that class. Maybe that's and then other days it's, this kid's got 4 A's and is rocking it, and we got to figure out how to get you in AP classes, and hey, you're looking at these Ivy League schools, and let's help you navigate this path, and everything in between. So it provides a lot of variety, and just allows me to make connections with kids and families. It is a wonderful job. It's awesome. Yeah.
And so talk a little bit about your background and kind of what led you to this type of work. I know that you're somewhat of an expert in some issues surrounding diversity, equity, and inclusion, and also microaggressions, which we'll get into later, but I was kind of curious on how you got into this type of work.
I've done a bunch of different things in, my time. I knew I wanted to work with kids, knew I wanted to coach. So I ended up coaching back at my high school in White Bear Lake. And then got into, was coaching, teaching there, taught at Fridley for a couple of years, and coached there as the head football coach there. Went to Chaska High School and was a dean for 2 years, actually, and then went back into teaching after that. And that was just a tough job. Like, just kind of walked around and felt like I was kind of responsive and not proactive to kind of, somebody'd mess up, they'd get sent to my office. And then was an athletic director for a couple of years at Maple Grove High School, and then came over to Wayzata, and I've been in this role. And as you look at that path, I think it's given me a unique perspective into multiple school districts. I think about my own experience in a school, not dissimilar at the time to Wayzata. We, I think graduated with 700 plus kids. There was some diversity within the school building, but there was also some underlying diversity issues within the school. And just really thinking about, hey, what can I do to make sure students have a great experience and make sure that they know somebody supporting them. And sometimes that they just have a voice to hear them. And, in this role, I'm lucky that our principal, Scott Gangler, has put me in this position to be able to do it. And as this time has gone, and then things in Wayzata, how we've gotten to this position is really look at trying to make sure that each and every student's succeeding, and we've kind of taken looks at that, and we've got students who really are thriving, and we've got some students that we're not that aren't, and there's lots of reasons for that. So that goes across all race, class, gender, across everything.
Yeah.
And then so within that, just being able to say, all right, well, I really look at the work that I do is more about just student experience for every teacher. Like, what are some good practices that we can make sure that every student who walks in our classroom feels like they belong, feels like they are important, feels like they're heard, feels like they can go to you as a teacher and say, hey, this happened today, and have people that believe in them. And so that's kind of how I feel like this work has kind of grown and evolved, and I get to work with a great team of people who all have the same vision, and they help push this work forward as well. So,
how long have you been in that role at Wayzata?
This would be 7 years now, I believe.
Wow.
So, yeah,
okay.
It's been a while.
So I'm sure that's changed over the 7 years.
Absolutely,
quite a bit.
Absolutely. Yeah. I look at, like, when I first moved into this role, I worked with one other person, and we really worked hard to make sure that our role isn't seen as, because it isn't, like I don't do discipline. Like, if you get in trouble, like, you don't come see me. I do student success, and that's really what we need to focus on. And our district has done a great job. Our admin team, and then the team of people that I get the privilege to work with, of really keeping that at the forefront of, like, like, every kid's going to have different issues across the board. And we really want to focus on how can we help students succeed, bring out their strengths, emphasize their strengths, and then also say, hey, here's areas we have room to grow, and help them either with direct instruction on how to grow, or connecting them with other people that can, if you come and say, hey, I'm struggling at math, I can help give you some strategies on how to do homework. Or you come out to the hockey rink and somebody says, hey, I'm struggling with puck handling, I might be able to give you some drills in that. But if you say, hey, I want you to be my coach for puck handling, that's not my forte.
Yeah.
So math isn't as well, or some of those things. So we help connect both families and students with just the resources that we have at a big school to make sure that they're succeeding.
Talk about your team and how that works at the high school. I'm assuming that you're not the only person that does this type of work.
No, absolutely not. It is a big team of people, and so Wayzata High School split up into 4. Each floor has a team, so it's all alphabetical. So I'm on the FL through LAQ is our kind of team.
Okay, so it's not by grade level.
Not by grade level.
Okay.
And then but that allows us to stay with kids for multiple years.
Yeah.
And stay with families for multiple years. And so within our teams, we've got 3 counselors, an associate principal, a social worker, a dean, and then an achievement specialist as well. So that's kind of the overall team. And then we've also got just our achievement specialist team that I meet and work with as well, who we do kind of this work together. And there's 4 of us within that team, so 1 each floor. So that allows us to kind of bring strategies that are working for us, strategies that are working for kids. We're able to work on some joint efforts together. And make sure that we're doing the best thing for all kids. So that's kind of my 2 core teams, and then sometimes I'm just working with a kid who I might have a relationship with who says, "Hey, can you come help me with this?" And I'm gonna jump in and do that as well. So
cool. All right, so the way I kind of wanted to frame the meat of our conversation here is I'm kind of the hockey guy in the room.
No doubt.
And you have expertise in all of this stuff that we're going to talk about. So as we go through, I'm going to try to make connections to how what you're saying is specifically connected to the hockey world. So
absolutely.
I kind of wanted to start off just with a kind of an overview or a summary of like what's one thing that you'd like to get across to youth sports coaches, let's say, that they can change tomorrow that would promote a better environment for equity?
That's a great question. I'm as a father, so I've got a 9th grader, I've got an 8th grader, I got a 6th grader, I've got a 3rd grader. So all involved in many things and staying busy and doing those things. I think one of the things is to keep the main thing, and that is that it's youth sports. And so, like as a head football coach, like I look at the main thing I want of our youth coaches is to provide a great experience for kids so that they come back, which means that everybody's experience is going to be different, and then having like this a lens of empathy to know like a kid's going to come with their own background, their own experiences, and they're looking for somebody to believe in them, to show them that they belong and they're in the space that they should be in. When kids feel like I belong here and I should be here, they're willing to come back, and they're going to do all the other things that we want them to do on the field and the ice and those things. But that's got to come first. And so I think if I had to say one thing, make sure your kids feel like they belong. And if they tell you that they don't, or they give you signs, whether it be that they verbally tell you, which doesn't happen a ton with youth, or maybe it's the signs of just of maybe their attitude or things are changing, or you notice those things, that keep your eye out for those things, and then be willing to have conversations, but also if you see those things, you got to believe kids. I think we often, as a coach myself, like you get in that thought process of like, hey, this is the way we should do things and this is the right way, but I don't have a job without all the kids that come out, and so believe in them and hearing that. So
what are some of those nonverbal cues that coaches can look out for? Let's say a kid's getting bullied, and like you said, not many 10, 11, 12-year-olds understand how to bring that up, or even have a real conversation with an adult. What are some things to look for to kind of notice something might be going on?
I think with kids, I think first and foremost, do everything you can to create an environment where kids feel comfortable talking to you. And I also think that there is a partnership with parents, that parents need to feel comfortable knowing, like, if I'm calling you about this, it may not be about ice time or those things, but hey, this is the experience my kids have, and you got to hear that out and take that serious, because they might be willing to go get in the car and talk to mom or dad or whoever on the ride home about, this is how this went. And if that's shared with you, you got to follow through with those things. And then, so creating that environment is one piece. And then I think the other piece is as you look, I think having a staff and people that are just mindful. So as you get to know kids, like, the kids walking in and down, there might be a reason. It could be something completely non-related, but simply going up in that and saying, "Are you okay? Hey, you seem down a little bit today. Is everything okay?" can go a long way just in terms of opening up conversation and somebody knowing you care about them. I think just the non-verbals of the body language sometimes can stand out. I think when you look at in groups, like, in youth hockey, like, you're traveling, you're going to things, and does somebody feel like they're not willing to, or at this, they've maybe been a part of the group, and all of a sudden they kind of pull away a little bit, checking into those things. I think sometimes it shows up in effort on the ice. Somebody feels like, hey, like I was in the locker room and this kid just keeps saying stuff to me. I just might not be like, feel willing to give the effort that I've given in the past. And so I think those things kind of can play and show up. And so,
yeah. And you mentioned the effort thing. Especially when it relates to hockey, I think like if you have an athlete that's their greatest skill is their speed, and they're in a game and they're not moving quite as fast tonight. I think a lot of times coaches see that and they bucket that into like physical or an effort only type situation. For me, what I'd like to get across, especially in hockey when it's so pressurized in Minnesota, being so serious all the time, is a lot of time what's going on up in between the ears is not allowing that player to exert the amount of effort required to be their best.
No doubt.
So like, especially for hockey, I think that's a big one because of how pressurized everything is in our state. So
absolutely, I see the same thing at the high school level. It's just when all the things come on. I kind of talk to our kids often about like. The thought conversations or the things that you have in your head, right, can often just paralyze you before, like you can pour into kids and do, and just being able to kind of handle that. That's hard to do. Like that's hard to build the habits to have the positive thought or to remove the pressure and just say, hey, I'm going to go play fearlessly and fly around. That's tough. That's tough for adults to do. That's tough for, we're in the NFL playoff time right now, and you watch these playoff games and you can see the pressure get to some people.
Yeah. And I think it is changing, but there is some old school tactics and coaching that's still going on when there is something going on where people think that yelling and that type of motivation is gonna fix the problem, which obviously we know doesn't work, especially if something's going on.
Yes, and I think I look at like the challenge of coaching and the beautiful thing about like youth sports is people have volunteered to do this, right? And so that their heart's in the right place. Then that challenge is it's difficult to lean in. Like coaching really happens when things aren't going. Like if everybody shows up and they give great effort and they just take coaching and they execute everything right on the ice and like that's fun and that's easy, but the real coaching comes in when you got to lean in and into the art of coaching and figure out, hey, how can I get the best out of this kid, and then can I also get the best out of this kid and these different personalities, and so yeah, is there some times that I think yelling at somebody is a little bit different than raising my voice to get a message across. So like if I'm, if it's a loud game and you're at the rink and you're yelling out a play or a coaching instruction might be different than, if I'm one-on-one talking to somebody and raising my voice, people tend to, the defense mechanisms go up. They go up in adults. They certainly go up in kids. And I pair that with, with the sarcasm piece. I'm a firm believer in like sarcasm doesn't have a place in a sports environment.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
Just because.
So explain what you mean by that.
I think you are trying to give instruction to somebody and bring out the best in somebody, and you're leaving it up for interpretation. So like, me saying something where we're having a conversation and we're joking about something feels really different than when you're trying to get a point across. And you're saying something that somebody can get stuck on. So I just think like, if I want somebody to somebody's not skating hard, I can say, hey, something, this doesn't look like, you're not skating as fast as usual. Did you get enough sleep? Hey, can you help me understand what's going on? That feels a lot different to a kid than going, hey, you look like you got sandbags tied to your skates here. What's going on? Yeah. Or that's all they're hearing then is I'm not, the negative comes out in terms of, hey, I'm hearing that. So, I am a believer in, I want to speak success in a kid, so I can say things a million different ways to get a point across. What's the point how can I get that point across where somebody's going to hear that I believe in them, hear that I believe that they're capable of more, and then be able to go do that.
Yeah.
So
that's a it's a fine line, right? Like when you're trying to develop relationships with high school kids, let's say, that what I deal with all the time is you want to kind of joke around with the kids.
Absolutely.
And if there's a player on the team that does something kind of not like the other kids, and the whole team kind of ribs them for it, and you want to be a part of that as a coach, but you have to be careful that it doesn't become what that kid takes home with him.
Absolutely. And I think it's like, you said it right, it's a fine line between I am having fun and I'm creating an enjoyable environment for our players, because we also want to do that.
Yeah.
Like, we really want to do that, create an enjoyable environment where kids are excited to come and they feel like they can be themselves, and then making sure that we don't become part of the problem, where we're feeding into that, or and I think chances are, and it kind of depends on what it is. Sometimes it's an innocent thing, and sometimes kids lean into that, and there's other times where the kid, it might be where the kid already feels like, hey, I'm not doing this the same as everybody else, and now they're teasing me about it, and now this is going on, and sometimes it's just, hey, they're teasing me about it, and coach is hearing them teasing me about it, and he ain't saying anything, and we inadvertently validate that to the kid because we haven't stepped in and changed that,
Yeah.
So.
And there's situations where, like, you have to take into account maybe how strong of a player you're talking to. Like, if it's the best player on the team, maybe you can kind of poke fun at something they did kind of silly on the ice or falling over. But if it's someone that's struggled the last 3 games and then you put that on top of it, it's
absolutely.
Like, well, that's a different situation.
The fine line and art of knowing your kids and knowing the team, and I think in youth sports as well, and there's that tendency for some coaches sometimes can travel with a group for a while, or be a part of that same group of kids for a number of years, and knowing those kids can be really, really advantageous, because you might know the kid who needs to be pulled aside. And one of the things that I do that I think is helpful, and I think it's helpful for all coaches at all levels, but especially in youth sports, is we have one-on-one conversations, just how can I best coach you? What motivates you? Because we get kids for all different reasons. Some kids are playing because their parents are making them. We got kids that are playing because they love it. We got kids that are playing because they have an external goal of, hey, I want to go play on at the next level, and everything else in between. So I want to know that, hey, how can I best coach you? Why are you playing? And I also want to know, like, when you make a mistake, how do you want me to coach you? Like, how do you want me to address that? Because we've got, I'm surprised at the number of kids that say, I just want you to tell me right then and there, and call me out on it, because I want to know. And we got other kids who are like, I kind of want you to pull me over to the side, and I tell our kids, I'm going to do that best I can with that, and I'm going to try your method as long as I can. And then there'll be some times that, we got to move it, but I couple that with a follow-up to continue to build that trust of, if a kid says, hey, I need you to pull me aside, and I continually pull you aside, and the behavior doesn't change, there might be a time where, especially if it's a player who's good, or is doing well, or is a leader on the team, and maybe you're not doing the things that we need you to do, and it's standing out, that your teammates need to hear me call that out. So I might call that out, and then I'll pull the kid aside, hey, I'm trying your way here. It's not working. I got to try this. And do you understand? And so that I can continue to build that trust, so they don't go, hey, I told you this is what I needed and you're not doing it. But so I think so out of the 4 things, it's why do you play, what motivates you, how can I best coach you when you make a mistake. But I also want to know, how can I best praise you when you do something right? Because we also got kids who they need that external praise. We got some kids need me to send a message home and say, hey, your kid's giving great effort, and some kids just want me to pull them aside, and they just want that as well. So, but I think that's equally as important, because we're going to get what we praise and what we permit, and so I want to make sure that I'm doing both.
Yeah. So we hit on the sarcasm thing, and we mentioned, obviously, it's a fine line. So when a coach might make a mistake and say something that they recognize right away that wasn't a good thing, what would your advice be to a coach to try to mitigate or rectify that situation right away?
I think you got to own it. Okay. First and foremost, I think you got to own it. I make mistakes every day. Like I was talking to our team. We did a leadership meeting this morning. We're we're talking through something, and we were talking about leadership a little bit, and I had a coach coming in and presenting, and right now I'm at that point where I think we got a lot of kids who talk about, hey, I'm a leader by example. And we've got a bunch of those, which is awesome, and I'm also to that point where I'm kind of sick of hearing I'm a leader by example, and that kind of, so that's the ground floor for that. Like, we can't use that as a cop out, and we've got to push other people, and we've got to, it's okay to hold somebody accountable and call them up to what they're capable of doing, because we believe in them. And we talked to that, and in that process I got fiery, and this was just this morning, so this is my example. And in that process of getting fiery, I wanted to make sure that the message didn't get lost, right? So there's some kids I got to come back to today and go, hey, by the way, as I got fired up, and I want to make sure you understood the message, and I could have done that a little differently. I'm going to we're all coaches, we're going to make mistakes. And so I think first and foremost, owning it, and then figuring out what ownership looks like in that. So ownership might be, hey, me having a one-on-one with that kid and just saying, hey, by the way, I want to make sure I said that, and it didn't come off the way that I wanted to. And so, hey, I want to make sure that you understand, and having that conversation and giving the kid a chance to have that conversation back and forth, and also being okay with the fact that a kid might say, I'm not okay with that. Like that, especially if I already owned the fact and I know that I didn't do what I needed to do, or I wasn't the best version of myself in that moment. Understanding that the kid might not be, right? And so I think we often, as coaches, give ourselves a little bit more grace than we give the kids that we coach. Yeah. So I think owning that is a part of it, and then also knowing the situation where if I've done harm, that the whole team kind of knows about. It's okay to get in front of a group and own that in front of the group. I think it does a couple things that it kind of humanizes you to the players, but it also models the fact that when I make a mistake, we all want our kids to own a mistake. Like
Yeah.
If we've coached somebody to do something and they don't execute it the way that we want, the last thing I want is a kid to skate over to the bench and say, hey, it was so and so's fault, or whatever, or blame, complain, defend, do those other things. If they can own it, we know we got probably a chance to get better. All right, and so I think as adults and coaches, we have a crazy opportunity to model that for our kids whenever we do something that we feel like we could have done better.
Yeah.
So I probably do that a lot. I own that a lot, because we're coaching a bunch of different kids and a bunch of different personalities, and we're all doing that. And I think it is difficult to show up and be your best version of yourself all the time. So I think just being able to own it, reflect on it, and go, this is what I would do better next time.
Yeah.
I think is a really big piece, but not only for our coaches, but for the relationship, and then for our players to see.
Just in my own experience in hockey, and this is more of like purely hockey example, but sometimes I'll come up with drills and it doesn't work out. It's a horrible drill. And I'll say in front of the entire team, like, we just wasted 10 minutes and it's my fault because it was a stupid drill. And so like when they hear that, it does a lot for the trust factor, for sure, if they can see you being willing to admit that stuff. So I wanted to move on we're going to talk about some kind of DEI type stuff, and the reason I'm kind of framing it like this is there's some buzzwords or things that immediately shut off some people in listening to this type of stuff for whatever place that they're coming into this type of a conversation. So I wanted to start with what's the best way to bring people on board to having conversations about this stuff, or being open to it?
I look at it as like this. There really isn't any like political statements in this. Like, I think in the grand scheme of things, everybody gets into coaching or working with kids to create an environment and an experience. Usually because we had a great environment and experience, and so I look at like all these conversations really are based upon player experience. Like, our job is to create the best possible experience for each and every player. And so if we're going to do that, well, that we need to know that everybody's going to have some different experiences, be aware of that, have methods in place to respond to that, and follow through with that. So I look at, like, if you're going to frame it anyway, this is about player experience.
I agree. And I think the other thing, at least tying into youth hockey, is the benefit of being open to being trained on this stuff is that your experience as a coach will be infinitely better. And you will have less stress, and you will have and you will have the tools to respond to situations that a lot of times without those tools, without that training, you might quit coaching because it's so horrible for you as a coach. So that's the other piece I want to get across and hammer the table a couple times. So
I look at like we expect our kids to learn and grow in so many ways that as a coach, why would I be unwilling to learn and grow in another way as well? Even if if it's something I don't know about, great. Hey, I don't know much about this. Well, that should be even a bigger signal to me that I need to learn about it. And so I think just that growth, because then I feel like, hey, I'm equipped. We all want our kids to go play with confidence because they feel prepared. They've put in the work and they feel prepared and they know what they're doing. I think it's the same thing for coaches. Like, you want to go into a situation knowing, hey, I feel prepared. That at least I have some tools in my toolbox that I know that I can use to help make sure the kids are having a great experience.
Right. All right. So why don't you talk a little bit, just really quickly, or however quickly you want to, about internal bias and that with people.
That's good. So I look at internal bias. There's so much out there on it. I'll give you my thoughts on it. Is we all have some internal bias. Like, there's no denying that. Like, I don't think it's a thing to shy away from. Like, but I think it's something to, if we recognize it, it allows us to kind of counteract it, if that's the best maybe way to put it. Like, I can counteract that now and say, maybe there's some of my bias coming in here. I look at, like, this Pygmalion effect of, like, what I expect. What I expect out of somebody typically is how I treat them, and that goes into then what they their experience, and then what they expect out of themselves. Probably going to lead to how they perform, and there's just this big cycle. Well, then they perform the way I expected them to, so now I kind of say that I'm right in that regard. And so I look at my job as a coach is to have really high expectations, and sometimes see in kids what they don't see in themselves, and be able to effectively communicate that in a way that shows that, hey, I care about you, and I want you to grow in both those pieces. And so I think part of that as a coach is being able to take recognize what our internal bias might be, and then make sure that we can counteract that. And one easy way is, are my expectations as high for this kid as it is for this other kid? Hey, am I coaching this kid the same way that I'm coaching this other kid? And be able to kind of get some checks and balances within yourself, to make sure that we can recognize it, but then respond appropriately. So,
yeah. One example that I can think of is if you're coaching a boys hockey team or a youth hockey team,
yep,
and it's all boys and one girl. Internal bias can come in with maybe you have a parent coach that doesn't have any daughters, doesn't quite understand what young girls are all about, and coaching them, and
yep.
so that's something that happens all the time, where maybe that girl is getting coached differently than the boys.
Yep.
So
I would say, I can't speak for all, but I know my daughters, and they would be like, I want to be coached just as hard. Like, I'm playing the sport because I love it, just like these boys do, and I want to be coached just as hard because I want to grow just like these boys do. And so I think that's a really, really good example.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on. Why don't you talk a little bit about microaggressions, maybe like a quick definition, and maybe some examples that could tie into youth hockey.
I think so. Microaggressions are like this everyday, put downs, terms that happen to just marginalized communities, right? So when you think about that, or underrepresented communities, in this case is probably the best way to put it in the case of hockey, right? Where you look at of that, and so I think some examples, there are some things that are just overt, like think about like microaggressions, and is just like name calling. You walk in the locker room and there's a sign somewhere. You go in the bathroom and something's written on the wall. And sometimes they're not as overt. Like it might just be that we're discluding somebody from these activities, and so I think part of that process is understanding like these are kind of everyday occurrences, things that happen in. Often, right? And so when you think about that that prospect of how can I make somebody feel belonging in a space where they're having to deal with these things, is being aware and being diligent of making sure that it's an inclusive environment for everybody.
All right, so I think a lot of coaches see and hear stuff that they know right away is a microaggression.
Yeah.
But they are not sure what to do, so a lot of times they don't do anything. So let's talk about good practices for response.
Perfect. You're leading me right in. So I look at, and there's really two pieces to it. I think that there's this, I'm coaching, I hear something happen in the locker room or something happens on the ice. I think one of the things, the main thing is to respond. I think, and I kind of said it earlier about something else, but when you think about, like, I'm validating that experience if I don't respond. And really validating the words that are coming out or the action by not responding to that. And so we have an obligation as adults, the trusted adults in the space, to respond and to respond appropriately. And so that response might look different depending on what that is. So I think that there's some times where you might need to call somebody out in terms of, hey, I'm going to remove you from the space so we can have a conversation about what you just did. And then there's some times that you need to, call somebody in and say, you know what, I see that these things are happening, and being proactive in terms of, like, you're better than that. This is the experience that this other student's having, and I need you to be better, right? And calling them up to what they're capable of doing. And then I think in the case of youth sports, there's often missed opportunities for the team to grow, right? And so, like, if something happens in the locker room and it affects everybody hears it, to not address it with everybody, it's kind of like I'm sweeping it aside because it's too big of a piece to it. And so that doesn't mean that I need to have this perfectly crafted speech. And sometimes just say, something happened in the locker room today, and I think and I know you guys heard it, and I want you guys to know that is not, that's not acceptable here. And so I think having a standard of values, and this is what we believe in, here in Wayzata Hockey, it's the Wayzata way, right? So I think it's puts you in a position to say, hey, we don't do that here, and set that standard for everybody. And sometimes it's resetting that standard so that they understand that, that's just not what we believe in. And then, so I think, to not bring that up to a full group when the full group's affected is a missed opportunity to set standards, let people know where you stand as the adult in the room, and ultimately you have the opportunity right there to stop the behavior or mitigate the behavior, or and put that in there. And so I think that's an opportunity that we've got to take. So I look at that like is being able to make sure that we redirect and stop the behavior as soon as possible. That we acknowledge what happened, and that we clarify the values, and make sure that people know where we stand and what's acceptable and what's unacceptable. Is really important factors there.
I think a lot of people hear that.
Yes.
They agree, but I think a lot of people don't realize how easy and short that process can be. When a coach hears something, if they, I think part of the hesitancy to make it an issue is their fear that this is going to become a 1, 2, 3 week process with other people involved and meetings and all this serious stuff. When, I mean, how often would you say that something, a microaggression can be told that's unacceptable to the entire team, whatever the case may be, and then boom, that's it?
Yeah, I think it depends on the severity, right? So I think there's certainly nuance into all of that, but I think there's some times that there's certainly lots of times where we can stop that behavior right there by redirecting, and then say, hey, we don't do that here. Everybody understand, and and then if need be, then following up, right? So I think that there's going to be some quick things that can be done. I think the important piece is the longer that it lingers. Like if it happens and I wait a couple weeks, well, that's going to be on my mind.
Yeah.
That's going to be certainly on the kids' minds, and probably on the parents' minds. And I've delayed and then the effectiveness of the redirection, the effectiveness of the lesson that can be taught has been lost. And so I think redirecting like then and there, like as soon as I can respond to this, as soon as it's appropriate to respond to it, I need to do that. And then I think. And then there's also some cases that feel like they're a little bit more severe, and then we may have to involve parents or those things. But I think in that regard, there might be a process involved. But is that process worth the kid feeling valued and feeling like he's a part of that?
Yeah.
I would say it is. I'm a firm believer that it is. And I think being able to also. Not be afraid of you get into this he said, or he said, she said, or she said, people just might not always, hey, I said this, but I didn't mean it that way. It's often met with a validation of behavior or an excuse for the behavior. Yeah. But being able to still hold that line in terms of what's acceptable and unacceptable. And I think being able to help people understand the intent of what they said, and then the impact of what they said. So,
talk about the defensiveness of I didn't mean it that way, and what's the next thing out of a coach's mouth when that's the pushback from the party involved.
I don't ever want to tell somebody what they intended to do, because that's we're getting into semantic stuff. So I'm a believer in that might not have been the intent of what you tried to say, but we also need to understand that this is the impact that it had, and you don't get to decide what that impact is. So yeah. So just like I can't tell you what the intent of what you said is, you can't tell me what the impact of your words or your actions had on somebody. And so I think that alleviates this battle back and forth of well, this is really what we meant, or I think some of the defensiveness sometimes comes across as my kid would never do that. I get that a lot too. My kid would never do that. That wouldn't be, and I think trying to get to that point where parents can understand. Well, kids are kids, and kids are going to make mistakes. That's just the way that I got 4 of them. They make mistakes. They're going to make mistakes, and so I think the lesson is not in. Plowing the road and taking that mistake away or acting like they would never do that, but helping them understand, hey, this is the mistake you made, and this is the impact that we had. Now, what can we do to be better in the future? And so because there's times I think that there's a hope that there's always going to be this closure, and that this happens and these two people are going to obviously shake hands and be buddies. And I think that accepting the fact that there might not be closure, when I meet with students, I meet with parents sometimes, I tell kids that whether you leave here and you talk again in your lives, or you're friends or you're not friends, I don't have control over that, and that's not my biggest concern. But I do want to make sure that we respect each other, that we've learned from what's going on, what happened here, and that we can move forward. I think that's a big piece as well.
I think a lot of times people, I'm not sure why, but they want to label kids as a problem kid or a bad kid or a kid that always does this stuff. And especially in youth hockey, when you're your reputation over your 6 or 8 years in hockey is so known, quite frankly, publicly known. I think we just talk about like maybe some of the more severe cases about not labeling a kid because of a mistake a bad kid.
Yes, and you talk about like community, right? So we're in a community, so we've got these kids just know each other, right? And families talk and all that, and that's that's always a hard piece because human nature is we label, right? That's just what we do, and so I think within all that, it's the hard part about coaching. I think it's the one of the bigger challenges I have as a coach is to say, I am a believer in growth. Like I'm coaching so that you grow into a better player, and first and foremost, a better person. Like, I want our kids to leave the program better people and thankful for the opportunity that they had to be a part of the program. Within that, you also know kids for a long time, and so if I stand on my belief that I want you to grow, and I continually hold you accountable for a mistake you made in the past, do I give you the license to go and grow? It's that battle because you want to hold kids accountable for behavior, and that's also a part of what we do. And so I think, I have conversations with kids and talk about, hey, this has happened in the past, or hey, this has been brought up. I want to, here's what I'm telling you. You got to clean. You can be whoever you want to be. You get to decide who that is. So if you continue to these behaviors, then that's the choice you're going to make. But you have the freedom to say, this is who I want to be, and do those behaviors. And so trying to sometimes unleash that because kids usually know too how if those things are coming up, or if somebody has been labeled in some way, shape, or form, and you see those behaviors coming up now. Hey, I started with a clean slate, and I'm seeing these behaviors come up. Being able to address that, and say, this is the things you've told me what you want to do. I'm not seeing these behaviors align. So, but it's a difficult path, and it takes conversation, and it takes trust, and it takes being diligent and all those pieces. So
yeah. All right, a couple more topics, and then we can get you out of here.
All good.
I got to get back to the school, but so let's say your goal was to improve the culture around DEI at an organization. How would you start to measure success in that goal? Because I think people get confused about that too, where it's like, we're not going to have any incidents in for this many months, but I'm assuming that's not a wise way to measure success.
I think one is clarifying the values. Like, as an organization, this is what we believe in, and we all can stand behind it, right? So, the example I brought up is, that we want, a positive experience for each and every kid. So I think as a group, whether it's a full organization, whether it's a coaching staff, hey, this is what we're about. This is what we believe in. And then I think having measures and things in place that people feel comfortable. So in this case, it would be really easy to measure and get a low incident of microaggressions, or if I don't have one anyway that anybody can report it. If I don't have, if I'm not
to validate it.
if I have no way to validate it, I can, hey, I'm doing great work. And so I think creating a system where people know this is the process that I can take, and typically it starts with coach. Hey, something happens, as a parent or a player, I know I can go to coach and talk to coach, and then coach can then decide, hey, or hey, I'm going to address this right now with this group, I'm going to address this with our team, or this is something that is of the nature that I need to then take this a step further, and I'm going to get the board involved. But there's a process in place, so not only multiple layers of people that need to feel support, right? So the parent and the player feel support, but also the coach feels supported, right? Because I think that's really hard, especially in youth sports, when you are looking around and you go, well, I know all these I probably have a relationship with the other parents. They could be my friends. And and knowing and so I think when you set the expectation of when these things come up, this is that process, it helps the coach feel supported, and it also alleviates some of this, well, you just chose to do that, like you're picking on my kid, or you're doing that now, where this is the role I chose to take, and this is my responsibility and obligation. Hey, I love coaching hockey, and I want to do this again next year, and this came to this came across my desk, this got brought up to me, and now that I've got this knowledge, I need to respond. And so I think that's the other part to it, and then I think then having a unified board or people that also have that support system when they know it's appropriate to step in. Because I think also as a coach, to be able to go, hey, this is my one of my really good friends, and it's this kid, and we travel together, we've done these things together, and I might not be, I can tell you my part to it of what I know, but I might not be the best one to get this across, and I need some support in this. It's no at the high school, right? I'm at the high school, I'm working, my kid's there. There's some of those things, and there are some times where, hey, I'm going to address it, and that's going to be, there's some times where I'm going to look and go, hey, counselor, I need you to step in and help me with this one here. You've got a really good relationship with parents, or, hey, AP, I need you as associate principal or principal, hey, this is to the level that I need your support in this, because, you can see where the roads are going to go. And so I think feeling that support, but it all starts with clarifying values and making it important.
Yeah. So. All right. Last question I have for you. How important do you think it is to showcase diverse role models in a sport of, hockey? The classic one is people of color, athletes of color that have made the NHL, and just talk a little bit about that for young kids, seeing their role models succeed.
Well, I think everybody wants to see somebody that they can identify with in that successful position, or or see that this is a path that's available to me. And so I think when you look at just in high school, for instance, I know that there are multiple studies across conducted in multiple different ways that show that when students of color have a teacher of color, that their success rates skyrocket. Yeah. And so just thinking through that and going, well, how can we then make sure that all of our players see people that look like them, that they can identify with in a position of success? Because I think what we often see is, in many regards, we just see whatever the media chooses to put out there, and we see what might be what's on social media, but being able to not only see that, but have that celebrated, right? So I think if there's somebody that I might follow, or I might believe is a great role model for me, and I follow that player, that's great for me. But the impact is monumental when all of a sudden you go, oh man, my league or my coach or somebody also, brought this player up, or showed this clip of this person, or used that person as an example, and now it validates me. But all right, we're on the same page now. So.
Yeah. Well, this has been fantastic. We could spend a couple more hours, I'm sure. Yeah, I think we covered a lot, but again, thanks for doing this. Do you have anything else?
One, I appreciate you letting me be on here and be able to talk through this. I think my main hopefully takeaways are gratitude towards the coaches who take the challenge and the opportunity to coach our young kids, and then also the responsibility that comes along with it, of making sure that each and every kid has the best experience possible, that they feel like they belong, and that they leave better people than when they came in. Where I'm adding value and pouring into kids' lives is why I got into coaching. It's what I believe in. I believe it's the purpose of coaching, and so I think that keeping that purpose first and foremost allows us to lead in a way that honors us, and make sure that we're moving in the right direction, and we're making decisions based on really what is our purpose of coaching. So I absolutely have goals. I want to win. I want to, every time we go out there, I want to win. I want to win a state championship every year. I am no different than anybody else. But I have found in my own coaching experience, when I let that guide me, I make really bad decisions for kids.
Yeah.
And I don't give kids a great experience. And so keeping that first and foremost, and trying to surround myself with people who are willing to tell me, hey, you might be losing your purpose a little bit, has been valuable. And so, again, gratitude, and a challenge to step up to the responsibility, which we've got a ton of people doing. And opportunities like this help push that forward. And so I'm grateful to you for letting me be here as well.
Yeah, no, it's something, ever since I heard you talk at the high school, I think it was probably even 3 summers ago, really piqued my interest and really piqued my understanding of how important this stuff is for player experience. So if you have any questions, please email me at hockeyops@wayzatahockey.org, and I can get some questions to Lambert, and we can respond in turn, and we can just keep on getting better.
We can do it again.
Yeah.
All right.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah.